Hello, this presentation will be about supporting children through middle childhood. And through this lecture, we'll be quickly summarizing some of the points made on the readings this week. And we will then discuss emotional styles and emotional intelligence a little bit more than it was discussed in the readings. And these are at the core of interventions for children at this stage. And we will also talk about interventions to support emotional intelligence in middle childhood. And we will finally be talking about anti-bullying programs, which are similar, but they have some additional components that are also important for children in middle childhood. So just a summary of what it was covered in the textbook, when we say middle childhood, we are referring to children who are roughly ages 5 to 12. We have children who are entering grade school to children who are finishing grade school in this developmental stage. So there's quite a range here. And this is an age when children are entering the school systems. They have usually been with family or at a daycare setting, which is typically, they have been in fairly small groups. And when they enter this stage, they are transitioning to a new environment. They have new and different peers, adults, mentors, teachers, different rules, and they are learning in a different structured environment. This is when they also experience a lot of diversity, but it is good for them, as you can imagine, because they're experiencing diversity in terms of sexual development, height, weight, ethnicity, gender, sex, socioeconomic status. And with these differences, though, they may often experience pressure to appear normal or assimilate, and they may also start to experience bullying. And this is also a time for moral development. They are trying to piece together what they have learned in their homes and also with now what they're learning in school. So they're trying to figure out what's right, what's wrong, and what their peers and what their families think. They're learning about all the newness, otherness, difference, and all the different cultural differences as well, and who they identify with, and who else in those groups, like who they are and how they fit together, or how they can respect other groups. So with all of this, sometimes there's recognition that there's discrimination, unfortunately, and equality for people who are different. So during this time, we start to see what we call code switching for non-dominant groups. So a person who is from a non-dominant group, they might behave one way when they are at home with their families or with their ethnic group members. And when they relate, but when they are in a, for example, school, and they may be with dominant groups or in a dominant setting, they may change the way they speak or they act. So emotional styles is something that was also touched upon in HIPC 1. There are emotional styles, inventories or questionnaires that you can use. They are useful because within these items, you can better understand the different emotional styles and coping of children. So for example, I took an inventory or questionnaire that had different items. So within some of these items, one of the items was outlook, and this refers to how long your positive emotions last. So if something positive happens for you, how long do you maintain this sense or outlook? So a question might be, how much do you agree with this statement? I am very good at seeing the positive side of things. So for these type of questionnaires, you may be asking the child directly or their teachers or parents. So next, for example, resilience. Resilience is how long negative emotions last or how quickly you recover. So for example, when somebody experiences a setback, for how long do you stay in that negative state? Then there's also social intuition, which is sensitivity to social issues or social cues, I'm sorry. So let's say that you're in a group and someone is acting kind of sad. So do you have the ability to pick up on that? So question might be, when I am talking with people, I am always attuned to their emotional state. Next, we have self-awareness, which is the awareness of the signals we put out. So more recently, with so many Zoom meetings, we might be more aware of our facial expressions. So question related to self-awareness might be, I am typically aware of my feelings. So this is related actually more to your feelings and not so much to how you look. So this is how aware you are of the feelings that are happening to you and how it has an impact on you. The next one is sensitivity to context, and is a degree to which we adjust our responses to fit the situation at hand. So let's say that you are angry with your kid because they were doing something wrong and you have a meeting to go to. So how much do you adjust to the new context? So question might say, I have been told that sometimes I behave in a socially inappropriate way, depending if you're not able to adjust to a different situation. Lastly, we have attention, which is the ability to remain focused and undistracted. So this relates to concentration skills. The reason why I wanted, for example, I wanted to go over these areas because they can be improved through different interventions that I will be talking about in the next slide. So I'm sorry, first I'm gonna be talking about emotional intelligence, and then after this slide, I will be talking about interventions. So emotional intelligence is the ability to regulate out our own and others' emotions. So regulating our emotions is very important because it has an effect in our memory, attention, learning, how we communicate with others, our relationships, and in the long run, our mental and physical health. So where you're not able to manage your emotions, you will be constantly experiencing disruptions. So for children who are able to regulate their emotions or manage them, they are better likely to have higher grades, experience more empathy, and have closer relationship to their peers. And adults with a high emotional intelligence have better relationships, less job-related stress and burnout, which makes, of course, logical sense. And it is important for us to acknowledge, because how we go about building this emotional intelligence and emotional styles will have an impact on children. So these are some examples of interventions to support emotional intelligence during middle childhood. So the first one here, so there are different interventions to support emotional intelligence, and there are various curriculums out there designed by different researchers, and you can use some of these techniques in your work with children. So for example, ruler is recognize, understand, label, express, and regulate, and it helps children recognize their various emotions. It helps them to name them, explore them, express them, and to regulate them. They learn how to ask for help, how to soothe them, and how to manage them. So these are some foundational tools for healthy coping. The mood meter, which is the image here on the slide, each color represents a different emotion. Red is angry, blue is sad, yellow is happy, and green is calm. And these are not necessarily good or bad emotions. These are emotions that kids might experience. So they should be able to identify them with words. They should be able to describe them. So they have, different emotions to choose from. And teachers, social workers, or other professionals working with children during this stage in their life, they can have this card out and ask the children how they're feeling and asking questions like, why are you feeling like that? Label it. So can you please, tell me, what can you do with that emotion? How can you manage it? So for example, you can help them identify activities such as taking a walk, breathing exercises, learning how to seek support, positive self-talk, or internal dialogue. So reframing the situation. So if you are frustrated with someone and they are reframing with, so if a child, for example, again, if it's angry at you, they may just be reframing, and the reason may be completely different why they are angry. And with this technique, with the next one, and read aloud questions, children, or in a classroom, you can read together aloud as a class, and after the story, you can pose questions to the class. For example, how is the character feeling? Why are they feeling that way? So for younger kids, you can ask them to show you a scary face, what it looks like, and what made the character feel scared. What happens when the character feels scared? So if you can also ask them, where would you put the character on the mood meter? What's the name of their feeling? How did the character act when he was feeling scared? What else can you do when you're feeling scared? And then regulate. What can the character do when feeling scared? What can a friend do when they're feeling scared? Or what can you do? These are ways of recognizing and regulating emotions, which give kids tools to regulate these emotions and function better in a socially acceptable way. Finally, we have, of course, mindfulness and CBT. And some of these are these are very common techniques. And it is important for students to note their tension or stress in their bodies and recognize unhelpful cognition. And these techniques are along the lines with the other techniques as well. So lastly, I wanted to touch briefly on anti-bullying programs, because this is what this stage starts to experience, also related very much to emotional intelligence. So just keep in mind that at this age, these things are at the forefront of children. So as you can imagine, they are entering school for the very first time. So it's important to openly discuss differences and otherness and talk about how a lot of this is socially constructed, and also take time to celebrate diversity. So anti-bullying programs should be community involved, and you want to assess the bullying environment and what is going on in the school community, who's being bullied and in what ways, because it's going to be unique in each region. Share and create very concrete definitions of what bullying is, because it is harder than you think to define bullying, and going through this process is very important Children need to understand what behaviors are not acceptable. And it is important to develop student peer mentors for students who are transitioning to a new environment, to a new school, and of course, provide professional development for education, teachers, administrators, nurses, social workers, and of course, assess the outcomes of the efforts. Again, I hope this lecture was helpful. I hope you have a great week.